Hello everyone, and welcome back to Band 7201 Data Visualization. In this module, we're going to talk about pre-attentive attributes and how they can help a viewer more quickly understand the story that you're trying to tell in a visualization. This module's learning objectives are as follows. At the end of this module, you should be able to explain the differences between iconic, short-term, and long-term memory, identify and apply pre-attentive attributes in text, and identify and apply pre-attentive attributes in graphs. Before we talk about pre-attentive attributes, we briefly need to discuss the brain and the different types of memory. This will help you better understand why pre-attentive attributes are so effective in quickly conveying information to a viewer. So we tend to think that we see with our eyes, we really see with our brains, and there are three types of memory that are worth discussing. So your iconic memory, this is your really quick memory. This type of memory is related to the part of your brain that quickly assesses when there is a threat or danger and acts accordingly. If you see movement out of the corner of your eye that looks dangerous, your body will immediately take action based on what your brain is seeing due to its iconic memory of a specific situation or survival instinct. Your short-term memory is memory that you use on a day-to-day basis when you're trying to keep track of a few items or thoughts without committing them to long-term memory. This is considered to be your working memory and can keep track of about 5 things at a time. And this is going to be important information as we move forward with actually creating visualizations and graphs. Finally, your long-term memory. If something is stored in your short-term memory and becomes committed to long-term memory, it then is associated with all of your other senses, and if you see an image or are presented with a stimulus that reminds you of something that's stored in your long-term memory, it will evoke a lot of different feelings and perhaps even remind you of specific smells or tastes that you have associated with that memory. So with pre-attentive attributes, we are trying to target the viewer's iconic memory. We're also going to keep in mind we'll also consider some of the capabilities of short-term memory while we're designing our visuals, but for now we're going to focus on pre-attentive attributes and how they help the iconic memory quickly determine what we are looking at. Here's the example from your text, Storytelling with Data. So the question here is, how quickly can you count the number of 3s in the image? So if we take a look, we have all gray text of the same size. In order to count the number of 3s, we really have to scan every single line in turn in order to determine how many 3s there are. There are no pre-attentive attributes to help us. Let's go ahead and take a look at a revised example of counting the 3s, this time with pre-attentive attributes, specifically a change in color. So here we have all the 3s darker. We can now quickly scan the image and see that there are in fact 6 3s. This happens almost instantaneously. All we have to do is quickly assess where the 3s are and count them. We no longer have to distinguish them individually by scanning each line. And this is one of the many pre-attentive attributes that we can draw upon in order to help our viewers quickly assess what we're trying to present in our data visualizations. Here we have all of the pre-attentive attributes discussed in Storytelling with Data. So these are adapted from Stephen Few's Show Me the Numbers. These pre-attentive attributes draw a user's attention to the place where we want it to go, and they create what's called a visual hierarchy. You can see we have orientation. The line that is crooked is the one that our attention is drawn to. Size, the one that is a different size, is the one where we look immediately. Hue, we look immediately at this yellow dot. Shape, we see a different shape and our eye goes there. Curvature, we see the straight line and our eye goes there, or vice versa if all these other lines were straight and we saw a curve. Intensity, so which is really the one we were looking at in the previous example, that our eyes go to the lighter dot. Line length, our eye is drawn to the shorter line. Added marks, our eye is drawn to that added mark. Spatial position, our eye sees the dot that is out of line. Line width, so we take a look at the wider line. This is something we can apply in our line graphs. Enclosure, which is also one of the Gestalt principles that we discussed. We take a look at the line first that is enclosed within the box. And then motion. Motion is something that, because of our survival instincts, we cannot look away from. If you've ever played with a freemium game or something that is free, say on a website, you may often notice that there are ads, and these ads include motion. Your eye is immediately drawn to that motion without you even thinking about it. And the advertisers know this, so they're definitely inclined to include motion in their ads. Catches your attention, you likely then close the ad and move on with your business. But the important thing to note is that your eye is drawn there because of the motion. It is calling upon that iconic memory. Let's talk briefly now about the concept of a visual hierarchy. So visual hierarchy is an arrangement of pre-attentive attributes that helps the audience process the information in a specific order. So in this example, we see that different words are in blue rather than in gray, and our eye is drawn to those words in blue and reads from top to bottom, left to right in order. So first I read, "What are we doing well?" And before I can process the next line of themes and example comments, I'm immediately drawn to what's highlighted in blue. So great products, replacement parts are shipped when needed, problems are resolved promptly, and general customer service exceeds expectations. It is after I'm done processing, first of all, the larger text that is bold, and then processing the blue text that is bold, that then I maybe go back and start to read the lighter gray text to get more detail. But in order, my eye is first drawn to this larger black text, then the blue text, and finally the gray text. So basically what you're looking at here is a combination of size and color and hue changes help guide the audience through a visual hierarchy so that they read the text in a specific order. Let's take a look at an example of applying pre-attentive attributes in a graph. Here we have the original graph with no pre-attentive attributes. My eye first goes to the title, so top 10 design concerns. So we do have lines that are longer and then shorter down the line. That is one way of visually tracking this information. But I do have to read individually each of the design concerns in order to internalize them. So I'm trying to focus on all 10 at the same time. Perhaps I'm drawn to the top one here that engine power is less than expected, but I'm not really given any other guide for tracking this information in the graph. If we take a look at this second version of the graph, we have some pre-attentive attributes added in the form of color. So now we have certain concern bars highlighted in red, and we also have the text at the top. So 7 of the top 10 design concerns have 10 or more concerns per 1,000. So now that is the story that we're telling, and our eyes track these red bars. While this is an improvement, it still doesn't necessarily focus us on specific types of concerns, but it does improve the visual hierarchy in the graph. If we take a look at this third example of this graph, we now have an even clearer visual hierarchy of information. So we not only have color differences, but we have hue differences as well. So we have 3 bars in dark red and 4 bars in light red, as well as the gray bars at the bottom. Our title has changed and it is still in red, so of the top design concerns, 3 are noise related. We are then drawn to these dark red bars and are able to quickly then look at the text on the right that also has the color pre-attentive attribute to help us navigate. So we pick up perhaps in red first, noisy tire issues, engine noise, and wind noise. We even have the parallel structure there with noise at the end. We then perhaps look at the bolded black, so in the rain, after the car had not been driven for a while, and freeway driving at high speeds. Then if we'd like, we can go back and read the long form text next to the bar. But the idea here is that we are creating a visual hierarchy with a combination of color and hue in this graph. So we highlight the different noise-related issues, and we are helping our audience read quickly to see what those specific issues are and under what conditions those issues occur, so in the black text. We have already discussed the process of decluttering in a graph and have gone through an example. We're going to take a look at it one more time and talk about the process. So here is the version of the graph that we ended up with in our last module after decluttering. We're focused on received and processed in terms of tickets, and we can see this gap here. So let's take a look at the general process for decluttering, which we'll then apply in Microsoft Excel. So the first thing we're going to do is push everything to the background. So we have made sure that everything is in gray, nothing stands out other than perhaps received and processed, which is bigger text. By pushing everything to the background, we can then decide what is most important and make choices with pre-attentive attributes as to how we're going to highlight what we believe to be most important. So the first thing we're going to do is choose to have processed stand out by turning its color to blue. In this case, we want to show the difference between received and processed, so we can start here with processed and make it stand out with the color blue. More specifically, we want to show where this gap actually starts to occur, where the number of tickets received is greater than the number of tickets processed. So in order to do that, we can first add data marks. This is something we can commonly do in either Excel or Tableau. If we add all of the data marks, we may find that having too many data labels makes the visualization feel cluttered. We really only need the data points at the point of difference and the ones after. So we can eliminate the data points that make it feel cluttered and then start to visualize just the data markers that indicate where the larger gap between the received and processed tickets occur. This is where this visual is left in this chapter, again, to give you an idea of how to start when you're thinking about adding pre-attentive attributes to a graph. First, push everything to the background, then think about what you want to highlight and start to make incremental changes in order to highlight what you believe the most important part of the visual to be. We'll now take a look at a couple of other examples of the use of pre-attentive attributes in other visuals. So the first is that of the use of color. So color can be very helpful in helping our eyes track. However, using too much color can actually have the opposite effect. So you can see in the table on the left, we have all these different colors. While they are connected to specific numbers, our eyes are just seeing a bunch of colors and they're not really able to track necessarily what is important. On the right, we have an edit. So we've pushed everything to the background and then started to bring things into the foreground with a combination of color and hue. So first, we've changed the title, Top 5 Drugs Country Level Sales Rank. We've bolded top 5 drugs, and that top 5 helps us track with our eyes. We're even given the legend of rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus, where the darkest blue represents the countries with the largest sales of drugs, and the lightest represents those with the least. We have different categories of drugs, which at this point don't seem to be that important because they're marked in A, B, C, D, and E. But now we can easily track which countries have which drugs sold in the highest quantities using the dark blue. We can also use color strategically based on what we're trying to accomplish. If we're trying to demonstrate the use of a brand, we can match what we want to stand out to that brand color. So in this case, if the client logo is green, we can have category 2 stand out by also coloring it green. Two other options are to use black to help things stand out against gray, or to use complementary color to also have different parts of the visual stand out. So in this case, blue complements the gray. Finally, we can think about position. So we read left to right and from top to bottom. Understanding this can help us position things so that we can put them in the order that we want the audience to read them. So we can think about starting at the upper left, moving to the upper right, and then moving down and to the right again. This has been a brief introduction to the use of pre-attentive attributes. So we've talked about the differences in iconic, short-term and long-term memory, and how our survival instincts are related to iconic memory, and how we can leverage that to help our audience quickly tune into what we are telling them in our visual. So we can use all of those pre-attentive attributes that were listed in the chapter in order to accomplish this. So these include all of the attributes here. We will take a look at how to harness these in Microsoft Excel. If you have any questions about this, please let me know.